Catch Me at the Ballpark is a manga series with an anime airing right now in spring of 2025. It's about Murata, a 30-ish-year-old salaryman whose only real hobby or enjoyment outside of work is going to the baseball game for the Motor Sons. He gets routinely served by the vendor girl Ruriko, who's 20-ish, and it's a story that just revolves around the baseball team. It's got obviously a Gyaru with Ruriko. It's got a rom-com element between the two. It's mainly slice of life with some focus on the sport aspect, but not really. It's not like Blue Lock or something. It's a pretty chill show, but I really enjoy it. I think sports are a great medium for kind of life lessons and commentary in general. The rom-com element is present, but it doesn't dominate the story. I would say it's primarily slice of life, but because of the structure of the story, it kind of focuses on the baseball team, the people that work there, the fans. It allows for a lot of varying backgrounds of people to come together for their own little short story, which is obviously both a strength and weakness of the show. Obviously, if you get a short story that you don't find interesting or you don't like the character, it's kind of annoying. But it does give you a really good range of stuff to see, and you're not just locked in with two characters doing kind of the same shtick over and over. But the reason I think it's such a good setup for like kind of life lessons in general, in real life, there's way more variables than sports have. Obviously, sports have corruption and favoritism and blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, the reason that I think sports can connect with everyone, at least in a show, is because everyone has the same rules, the same chance. You start the game on equal footing. You all have the same opportunity to get better and learn outside of the game itself. So the game is really a manifestation of your efforts and talents. So I think it creates an environment where it's easier to accept your mistakes and your losses. Obviously, in real life, there's a million variables and excuses. If you're born as Elon Musk's son in the United States, as opposed to some drug addict in a back alley in the Middle East, you're just worlds apart to begin with. And obviously, there's plenty of excuse making in sports and blaming the refs. But at the end of the day, there's a scoreboard. You had the same rules, broadly speaking. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter how much money you have, or if you're smart or dumb or good looking or ugly, or an extrovert or introvert, or if you're fucking crazy. You have the same opportunity as everyone else. And if you're the best, most of the time you win. And if you're not, most of the time you lose. And that's how it is. And I think the show uses this environment to its advantage. You have the American baseball player Dennis, who wants to play in the MLBs, and he's wanting the scouts to be at his games in Japan. And he's pissed off because Japan's the best that he can do right now. And the fans don't like him because he's only out for himself. And as the story goes on and he embraces Japan, he tries to embrace the language a bit more. He makes plays that are selfless. He really gets the most out of the experience. And obviously, this is never too serious in the show. It's not a heavy show, but that's an easily translatable lesson for life. Obviously, everyone has plans and dreams and goals. For most people, they don't work out. And it is really important to just kind of embrace the journey along the way and be thankful for what you have and make the most of where you're at, because oftentimes you're not going anywhere. And I think that's the kind of thing that is really easy to see in a sport that would need to be way more nuanced and drawn out and complex just in real life or a drama or whatever. You get guys who are struggling with their age and becoming self-conscious about their numbers. Obviously, being self-conscious and hesitant usually makes things worse. You got guys who are frustrated because they're not starters, they don't have the talent, and sometimes there's just not much you can do about it. Again, something much easier to admit in the sports world than real life, but it happens in both, obviously. The most recent episode had a really great one where it talks about the catcher running behind the first baseman every play, even though 99 times out of 100, he doesn't need to be there and it doesn't mean anything. But because he's put all the work in to have good routines and good habits, when it matters, he's there. Obviously, the show makes a big joke about it, and it makes them do vocal stretches for certain generic phrases. And Ruriko finds herself saying the phrases reflexively. And obviously, there's a lot to be said for good work habits that might go unnoticed, and just good habits in general and good routines. Obviously, it's much easier to show and explain in a baseball show than to show the tedium of the guy who works 5, 6, 10 extra hours a week at home to get the promotion down the road 5 years from now, 8 years from now, whatever the case may be. there's a little bit about a couple of the wives and girlfriends of the baseball players going to buy their meals at the concession stands so they look supported and they're not just ignored, and just being generally supportive wives and girlfriends. And because it's a stadium full of people, you get a ton of little side stories like this, people of all different backgrounds coming together. It's just a really nice, chill, wholesome slice of life show. It's not going to fucking change your life or anything, but I think it's worth a watch. And if you're into the whole Gyaru rom-com thing, it's not super deep. Obviously, Ruriko is the one teasing Murata. Murata is just kind of your beaten down salesman. And something that's interesting about it to me is that we get a little bit of Ruriko outside of the baseball games, but even then it's usually with some of the other vendor girls. And Murata we get a little bit of at the office, but primarily we only see him at the baseball games. And it's kind of an interesting choice to me because you could go one of two ways with it. You know, you could show them a ton outside the baseball games and make it clear that they have a life outside of that. Or you can limit it to them only really interacting at this venue for these events. And I kind of like that it does it because while you are missing out, obviously, on a ton of depth that you could get from the characters, there is a lot of that in real life where you have people that you only interact with at a very specific occasion or job or place or whatever it may be. I'm sure everyone who has a place that they go to a lot, whether it's a bar or a bowling alley or a sporting event or jujitsu or whatever that your thing is, where you see people there that you literally don't see in any other context, work being a huge one, obviously. And it is interesting that you spend all this time with these people, but you only know them in this very niche way that's only a fraction of their life. And in that capacity, I think the sort of slow burn, not primary function of the story for the rom-com element works. Obviously, it's a little bit different if you put them in a school where they see each other every single day, or if you start the show and they're desperately looking for love, as opposed to Ruriko's just doing her job. And this is kind of Murata's outlet from life and work. And obviously, most people wouldn't try to form a really tight-knit relationship with someone in that scenario very quickly. So in the manga, already one season has passed and they're late in the second season at the part that I'm at. And I think it works that a romance would develop over the course of a couple of years when you're only seeing each other a few minutes out of however many home games there are that season that you run into each other. And plus, I just think Gyarus are fun in general. And I think the kind of young girl with all the energy teasing the burnt out salaryman dynamic works. So I'm going to leave it there for this one. I just wanted to mention it because it's pretty lighthearted, pretty chill. Just kind of a nice, simple theme of everyone being tied together by baseball and a lot of little different characters and their backstories and just how many people can come together over a hobby or a sport or whatever the case may be. And it's nice to just have a lighthearted show to put on sometimes and not everything be super complex and serious and dark. So if you've seen it, let me know what you think. I try to respond to the comments that aren't just insults, like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.